Overthinking can destroy relationships before anything even goes wrong. And the worst part is that most people who overthink are not trying to create problems. They are trying to protect themselves from getting hurt. So they analyze everything: the tone of a message, the time it took someone to reply, a small change in behavior. And slowly, their mind turns tiny details into emotional stress. Because when you care deeply about someone, uncertainty feels dangerous. You start feeling like one wrong message or one small mistake could change everything. And that pressure creates anxiety. A lot of overthinking comes from inconsistency. When someone is clear, consistent, and emotionally stable, your mind usually feels calm. But when someone gives mixed signals, disappears emotionally, or changes their energy constantly, your brain starts searching for answers. Because humans naturally want certainty. So your mind keeps replaying conversations, trying to figure out what changed. And the less clarity you get, the more your thoughts spiral. That is why overthinking is often not random. It is usually a reaction to emotional uncertainty. Another reason people overthink so much in relationships is fear of abandonment. When you are emotionally attached to someone, the possibility of losing them feels painful. So your brain becomes hyper-aware of every possible sign of rejection. A slower reply suddenly feels personal. A short message feels cold. Someone needing space feels threatening. And even if nothing is actually wrong, your mind prepares for rejection before it even happens, because your brain thinks overthinking will protect you. But most of the time, it only creates more anxiety. Social media has made this even worse. Now people can overanalyze everything instantly. You can see when someone is online, when they viewed your story, who they follow, what they like, and instead of creating peace, constant access creates obsession. People spend hours trying to interpret tiny digital behaviors that often mean nothing, and without realizing it, they become emotionally controlled by things that were never meant to hold so much importance. One of the hardest truths about overthinking is this: sometimes you are not overthinking because you are insecure. Sometimes your intuition is actually noticing inconsistency, and that is why overthinking becomes confusing. Because there is a difference between anxiety and intuition. Anxiety creates fear without evidence. Intuition notices patterns. The problem is that many people ignore unhealthy behavior for too long, so their mind stays stuck, trying to figure out what feels wrong. A lot of people who overthink also struggle with self-worth, because when your confidence depends heavily on another person's attention, your emotions become unstable very quickly. If they seem interested, you feel good. If they become distant, you feel anxious. Your emotional state constantly changes based on someone else's behavior, and that creates emotional dependency. Instead of feeling secure within yourself, your peace becomes dependent on external validation, and that is exhausting mentally. Overthinking also becomes dangerous when you start creating emotional scenarios that are not even real. You imagine conversations, rejections, worst-case situations, and your mind reacts emotionally to things that have not actually happened. That is why overthinking drains people so much, because your brain is constantly fighting emotional battles internally, even during moments where nothing is technically wrong. Another difficult truth is that overthinking often keeps people attached to unhealthy relationships longer than they should stay, because instead of accepting reality, they keep searching for explanations. They think, maybe I misunderstood, maybe they still care, maybe things will change, and while they are busy analyzing everything, they avoid facing the real issue. The relationship is making them emotionally unstable. The solution to overthinking is not pretending not to care. It is learning how to emotionally ground yourself. You stop making someone else the center of your emotional stability. You stop relying on constant reassurance to feel secure. And most importantly, you start paying attention to actions instead of obsessing over hidden meanings, because healthy relationships do not require constant decoding. They feel clear. The truth is, overthinking usually comes from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of losing someone, fear of not being enough. But the more you abandon yourself trying to keep another person, the more anxious you become. Because peace does not come from controlling every situation. It comes from trusting yourself enough to handle whatever happens. And once you truly learn that, relationships stop feeling like emotional survival. They start feeling safe.